right. I think we're live, everyone. We're live, I think. Let me just refresh my Facebook page and make sure. Let's see. Ooh, we're live. Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, so we are streaming to you live for our scary. Gosh, this nurse's outfit is scarily small. Let's see, we've got some Halloween lighting here. We've got a jack-o'-lantern. Allison's in the kitchen. How's that? Is that working? There we go. Ooh, this is so silly. I love it. Now I get why Elvira does this. So if you're just joining us, this is our hopefully we're starting an annual tradition. So let me know in the comments, which I'll have on my phone in a second. Let me know that you can hear me okay. And let's dive in to some of our FAQs. And the reason that I created this fun, silly Halloween, maybe it'll be a tradition if people like it, is because I want to help people or encourage people to ask the scary questions. There's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of confusion. And Halloween being a silly time of year, also problematic around different kinds of costume appropriation and things like that. And also for some of my friends who have had a lot of, scary things happen to them on Halloween. I thought we could make Halloween a little bit more fun. And I asked people to send in their scariest questions about relationships, about sexuality, about intimacy, about dating, and we've got a whole bunch of them. I was gonna cut them up and then pull them out of the jack-o'-lantern at random, but I think it's more fun to actually have the jack-o'-lantern actually has a candle in it, and we have the lights a little bit low, so that it's spooky. So let me know what your comments are. I'll pull them up on my phone. And if you want to submit some questions, you still can. You can go to readaboutsex.com/scarysexed, or you can leave them in the comments. And I'm doing this on my laptop via the Blue Jeans app for those of you who are nerds about Facebook Living. So I actually have my phone so that I can follow the thread. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who submitted questions. There were some really touching questions and some really heartfelt ones. There were some, scary questions with really silly attributions, like who to attribute it to. And we had a lot of anonymous postings, as I thought it would be. So now, let's see, we've got comments. Victoria says everything looks okay. We get a jack-o'-lantern and a ghost. So now, okay, now I need to turn that down. We've got comments. Okay, that's working. Victoria says. And Haley, hello Haley, says yes. Amanda, hi Amanda. Yes, I am the Reid, Nurse Reid. And for those of you who don't know, back when I was an actor, before I went into sex education, I actually did play a male nurse, an evil male nurse, on the soap opera Another World, I believe it is, or it was All My Children. So I didn't wear a costume quite like this, but this is a little bit sexy. It even has a little sexy apron, and I'm not gonna stand up any higher than that because this is Facebook, and that's what's going on there. Leslie, thank you. Yes, I will squash that fever. Other people are watching. Vera, Matthew. It is on the East Coast. It will turn midnight in a little while. On the West Coast, we have a ways to go till midnight, but I thought that I would do a late night Facebook Live so that we could get all Halloweeny. And I just want to say thank you to all my friends who supported me in this kooky idea, and to everybody on Facebook who is cheering us on and sharing and getting spreading the word so we can get more questions in. Kate from New Zealand. What time is it? What time is it in New Zealand, Kate? Hello, Logan. Yes. Hello, Matt. Jinx. Okay, awesome. Great. So keep leaving questions and comments. I'll scroll through and check them out. But why don't we dive right in? And remember, the purpose here to have these FAQs is, one, to role model that we can talk about scary stuff. Try to give people some good information. There's a couple of questions that I actually don't feel comfortable from an experience perspective answering. So I'll tell you what the questions are, and then I'll let you know that what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up and interview somebody about the actual answers. I'll give you what I think might be a Reid answer, but there's some things here that actually would be more appropriate if they were answered by the kinds of people that are actually experiencing these things. And I know a lot of sex educators all over the map from different demographics and different lived experiences. So it'll be fun that we can use these questions as an excuse to reach out to them and get them on Facebook Live. And I encourage you to continue sending me questions, or reach out to your favorite sex educators and ask them questions. And if you need to pay the money to get the answers, awesome, please do that. Support your local and international sex educators. It can be problematic or tricky making a living doing this thing. And just because I'm answering questions for free doesn't mean every sex educator out there owes you free answers. And then, of course, if you want to support my work, you can come to a workshop or buy an online program or something like that. But without further ado, let's dive in. And Kathy from California. Hello, Kathy from California. She writes in, how can you let people close when you have sex if you're afraid to be close to people? If sex sometimes feels terrifying. Well, this is a really good question, and it's kind of an interesting dilemma. How can you let people in when letting them in, pun intended, is scary, when it's actually terrifying? And we have another question that I can't find right now that's about vulnerability from somebody. And it's how do you let people in close around sex when you're scared? And so for me, I'm not a psychologist, nor do I play one on television. And I never played a psychologist on a soap opera. I think one of the things that's useful, and this also, if you don't have this challenge or this dilemma, this can also be useful just kind of understanding the answer, because one day you might have a friend or a lover or a loved one who has this situation. And, if these bits of advice work really well for you, then maybe you can pass them on to the other person. And it does also kind of go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I think it's important, that these are just my thoughts and my bits of advice. So take what's useful, copy and paste them, throw them into your little tool bag and run with those tools. And the ones that don't work for you, just chuck them. It's probably not the right advice for you. And it's not, if it doesn't resonate for you, don't worry about it. You're not broken because something that comes out of my mouth doesn't appeal to you. That being said, how do you let people close when you have sex if you're afraid to be close to people? My first question for Kathy from California is it the sex that's terrifying, or is it the people part that's terrifying? I think when we can slow things down, for a lot of people, dating and relationships and intimacy and sex happens really fast, and it's a lot of things happening all at once, all stacked on top of each other. And if you can slow it down, maybe not in the actual situation when you're having the sex, although that is really good advice as well. But if you can slow it down enough to start to kind of parse through what's going on and ask yourself, well, what is scary? What is terrifying about letting somebody in to your world, to your bedroom, into your body, and see if you can't start to identify, like, what are those pieces, and look at terrifying, kind of reorient terrifying and fear as dashboard lights rather than indications that something's broken. What if they were actually your body or your mind trying to tell you something's missing, something's not there that you need, that if it was there would change the situation dramatically. The other thing that I think is useful to drop into the beginnings of this answer, and I think with all of these questions, some of them are just so amazing that we're just going to scratch the surface in answering these questions. Like, it's really kind of the beginning of a much longer and more awesome journey of self-discovery. But if you can start to slow things down and parse things out, and then ask yourself, like, what might be missing, what might pop up, what might start to reveal itself is, oh, if I could ask for this thing, or if I did it differently, or approached a situation differently, if I had a bunch of conversations with somebody and maybe got to know them better, or felt more seen and heard by them, then things would start to shift. Other situations to just kind of take into consideration is when you start to break this stuff down and look at it, is the fear coming from a different time in your life? Like, maybe the person that you're having sex with or considering having sex with, maybe the fear is not really coming from this situation, but maybe it's coming from a situation from your past. In the same way that, you might have fear come up from, maybe around Halloween because something, really scary or shitty happened to you in a previous Halloween. What is it about sex? Maybe it's something traumatic. Maybe it's something non-consensual that happened, family-oriented or not. If it's not this person, is it the fear coming up and being kicked up or anchored to something in your past? Now, with that kind of an answer, and even with this entire answer, it can always be good to look and seek out resources. Maybe it's therapy, maybe it's counselor, maybe it's going to a bunch of workshops, maybe it's, nerding out with different kinds of coaches or people who specialize in things like EFT, or hypnosis might be a thing. It might be the work of Byron Katie. It's really going to be the beginning of all of us seeking solutions to challenges, not trying to necessarily heal something that's broken. If you think of yourself as already being whole and complete, then your body and your brain and maybe your spirit or your heart, or if you're super woo-woo, something else out there is giving you signals and clues for something that if you could bring it into the present, might shift it dramatically. So again, like, it's the beginning of looking at things. When in doubt, I'm going to say always try to at least find your words and start to talk about things. You might have to, maybe journaling is a good way to get things out of your head. Like, when you're feeling afraid and scared, like, write about it. See what you can get down on paper. Keeping things up here, your brain, your mind is a bad neighborhood, and you're going to get mugged up there, as one of my mentors once said. And so how can you start to get things out and kind of capture what things feel like? Writing might not be your thing. Maybe it's going to be more like somatic, and working with movement or dance. And maybe it's going to be something vocally, working with a vocal coach. Or maybe it's going to be kind of like family constellation therapy or something like that, where you're role-playing situations or, kind of whatever's popping up in your head to see where it leads and where it leads you. And a lot of this stuff can be heavy. And sometimes maybe it's not this big thing from your past. Maybe it's just that it's frightening because, you really like this person. And you're worried about getting close to them because you've had your heart broken in the past or something like that. Or maybe it's because, physically in the past, pain has been, or sex has been painful for you. And so, like, of course, you might have a little bit of fear, and some anxiety around it because, who's to say it's not going to be painful again? We don't know. It begs more investigation. For painful sex things, the checklist of, like, are you using lube? Are you going too fast, too hard, too soon? Is your body not fully aroused? Things like that. You identify them and you're like, oh, that happened so many times in my past relationships that I get all clenched up when it comes to having sex with anybody. So I feel like I've gone on long enough with that answer, and I'm going to check my phone. As, of course, my phone's telling me that it wants to die. What do we got? Thanks for leaving comments, everyone. Share this video if you have a group or if you have friends that you think might enjoy this. I posted this in a couple of places, but I didn't get a chance to because I was flying today, which is also why I was a little bit late in starting. Next question. This comes from Anonymous from the UK. It's not really even a question, but more of a statement that is a question, which is how to be truly vulnerable. And this kind of coincidentally dovetails a little bit into Kathy's situation, because let's say that what's afraid or frightening or terrifying for Kathy is like being vulnerable, letting people in. And same thing for Anonymous from the UK. I think a great place to start with being vulnerable, and this is going to be a big answer that is very simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. And for me, vulnerability really has to do with sharing the things that you're afraid to share. And that can be difficult in a couple of ways because, one, if you grew up in a family like I did, my mom and dad loved each other very, very much. They shared that special hug 4 times. My 3 brothers and I grew up watching 2 people that we catch when we were kids making out in the kitchen or cuddling on the couch, like being really affectionate and loving to each other. We would watch them slowly kind of destroy each other and grow distant and just more and more rageful because they didn't have the ability to talk about what was really going on. And I think looking back at my mom and dad, if they had had better communication skills for how to talk about difficult conversations and then also see them through, that would have built a kind of intimacy and closeness and vulnerability that they lost because not being able to talk about stuff eventually just kind of built up this kind of death by paper cuts and all these little emotional scar tissue over and over and over again. And not being able to ask for what they needed or talk about it turned into resentment. And then that resentment turned into a lot of frustration and anger and kind of calcified into resignation that was kind of like, like candle wax, like sealed over the canning jar of rage that they had from basically being powerless. And even though it was obvious that they were still like really madly in love, but more mad on top of it all, they still really cared about each other and were committed. It really took all the fun out of, for us, living in the family. We have little bursts of fun, but then that was, we would just hold on to those as tightly as we could until the next fight came. And eventually my mom would become an alcoholic. My dad tried to fix that by making more money, so he became a workaholic. And they were just never able to heal all that emotional scar tissue that happened. And they weren't able, in the end, to improve their relationship other than late in life to just kind of give up on the fighting. and that kind of surrender that allowed for a little uptick in happiness and closeness. I don't even know if it was closeness, but there was less fighting, so there was more. It wasn't even happiness. There was just less fighting, so things got better because there was less fighting. I don't advocate that you use exhaustion and giving up as a means of improving your relationships. And so if my mom and dad had ways to be vulnerable with each other and share the things that were difficult and had tools for actually finishing a conversation more than just having it blow up into a huge argument, I think they would have been able later in their relationship to be even more vulnerable and more caring for each other because they just would have exercised those muscles over time. And so for Anonymous in the UK, I think the truly vulnerable piece is, one, to start sharing with yourself the things that you're not saying, and also to kind of explore and deepen your own self-knowledge about yourself and your own journey. And maybe you start that with a therapist because maybe your friends don't want to hear it, or maybe your friends are not the right people to talk to because they're either going to gossip about what you're sharing to other people, or they're just going to take they're going to give you the wrong advice or the wrong kind of support. So it's just going to feel worse. But how can you start practicing sharing and talking about the things that are really scary for you? So this is really appropriate for Halloween. Like, who is somebody? If you need to hire them. But if you have somebody in your life, who is somebody you can start to practice that with? And again, maybe it's a journal. Like, journaling is really powerful. And then you can kind of read the things you wrote to yourself in the mirror to practice saying things out loud and unblocking all that energy that can get really stuck and knotted up in your throat, because some of us were taught not to speak up as kids. Some of us had our voices taken away from us as kids and as young adults. And some of us have just had so many crappy relationships and shitty things happen to us that, speaking up just doesn't, we just developed the life perspective that, what the fuck, it's not going to make a difference. It's only going to bring more havoc. So we just remain silent. So the vulnerability piece, I think, starts really, for me, with words, and then also allowing yourself to feel. I taught a workshop this weekend down in Orange County, and one of the things that we're talking about was, if I had to give you 2 bits of information to improve your life, the first thing would be say what you're not saying, and the second bit of advice would be feel what you're not feeling. And what I mean is go find ways for you to be able to cultivate the courage and the muscle memory of that speaking up is a good thing, and learn how to navigate your own emotions and also hold space for others if you can and when you're having a good day, to be able to have a difficult conversation all the way to its resolution. And the feeling your feels is really like, go find practices that allow you to get in your body and have a somatic experience and get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And that's a really great skill set, because your ability to remain present when you're feeling uncomfortable, that ability is really great. One, for you, because I believe, and maybe it's a simplistic belief, but a couple of my psychology friends say that my belief kind of echoes the Sedona method, but I've never read that book, so I could be wrong. But they've said that, where your feelings just want to be felt. And a lot of us grew up in places, with anger and sadness and stuff like wasn't appropriate to feel or to express in your household. And so we learned how to stuff it down. And then you come to a point in your life where you're just kind of filled, like you're an emotions hoarder, and you're just cluttered with all of these unfelt emotions. Go find a somatic practice that allows you to let yourself feel these feelings, so that you can do some like emotional feng shui and make more room and develop the ability to feel. And that can be really powerful because your ability to feel and stay present with difficult feelings also means you're building up the muscles and exercising the muscles to feel joy and ecstasy and pleasure and fun. And you're building the muscles to be able to feel those things too, so you're not quite so numb. This also has the bonus benefit of being able to remain present with others on a good day. On a bad day, you're just like the rest of us, me included. When you get surprised, you get angry or upset, and then you just spiral out of the ability to be present because you just dumped a bunch of cortisol and adrenaline and other hormones into your bloodstream, and you are offended. But your ability to be present when feeling uncomfortable is really useful when you have the bandwidth to be able to hold space for other people. So when you can hold space for others while they're having their feels and leave them feeling seen and heard, how that lands on other people is that you're vulnerable, like you're allowing them to be vulnerable. And so there's a vulnerability exchange, I guess, for lack of a better word. And your ability to be able to share the scary things for you is, your way of being able to give somebody else space to hear you, to connect with you in ways that people feel or that registers to them as vulnerability. Also, Brené Brown is friggin' genius and has a lot of great writing and content, some TED Talks and things like that, and other videos online about vulnerability. So I would also kind of go down those different rabbit holes of vulnerability. And also for Kathy from California, like check out Brené Brown's work as well. Next question. I will look at the things coming in. Let's see what we've got. Thank you, Katrina. A bunch of other people are watching. Thank you, thank you, thank you. People say, I must go looking for these clips. If any of the things that I'm saying, like dropping Brené Brown, if you have links, internets, if you want to fetch them and post them in the comments, please do. Like we can, crowdsource some of this stuff as well. Next question. On Scary Halloween. It is now officially 10 minutes past midnight on the East Coast. I was babbling away and forgot. So happy Halloween day, everyone, on the East Coast. Ooh, this really feels like an Elvira show. I'm really enjoying this. Maybe this is my future. Nurse Reid and Elvira. Also, just so you know, Girl Sex 101 author Allison Moon is in the kitchen making soup. And if you leave a bunch of comments or post on Allison Moon's Facebook page to come join us, we might, I can't promise this, we might have a guest star appearance from the kitchen. Girl Sex 101 author Allison Moon, also the author of the Spanish translation of this is how I'm going to get sex tonight. I'm promoting Allison's work. Sexo de Mujeres. Del Mujeres? Entre Mujeres. I thought that would get her to come in if I mispronounced it, but it didn't work. We'll keep trying. All right, so enough of that. Next question. How can I express my desires to my partner clearly and confidently, despite my fear of being rejected or judged? This comes from Lisa from Canada. Thank you, Lisa from Canada. And thank you, everybody who's leaving comments and writing in. And if you want to leave questions that we'll try to get to tonight, it's readaboutsex.com/scary-sex-ed. And that'll give you the submission form. So how can I express my desires to my partner clearly and confidently, despite my fear of being rejected and or judged? Lisa from Canada is giving us this one. And oh, something's happening. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, This is unprecedented. It's Allison Moon, ladies and gentlemen, of Girl 601 with your werewolf ears. Hello.
Hello.
Are you Allie Wolf, or is there a thing?
Obviously, Allison Howl at the Moon. I mean, it writes itself.
Allison Howl at the Moon with us. Do you want to help me answer Lisa from Canada's question? How can I express my desires to my partner clearly and confidently despite my fear of being rejected and or judged?
Yeah, word.
No word.
All right. So my advice is a little bit no nonsense, and I'm not nearly as delicate as Reid about these things. So I'll offhand it to him after this. But I say like 99%.
Good nurse, bad wolf.
Bad wolf. 99% of the issues that I encounter when people have confidence issues in the bedroom come from a fear of being rejected, as you mentioned, that comes a lot from insecurity around your own sense of self-worth, sense of self-confidence, sense of self-assessment. And so it's easy to feel scared of being rejected when you actually feel like maybe their rejection could be legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
I think success in the bedroom in relationships often comes from a belief that even if somebody rejects you, it's not going to do you long-term damage. That, you know, if somebody's not that into you, then that's their loss, right? It's kind of this like old school way of what your mama hopefully taught you about, like, oh, it's their loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think having that experience in bed is actually really key. It doesn't mean that doesn't hurt to be rejected, but I do think it's a lot easier to shake it off when you have a core sense of self that is unfuckwithable. When no matter how pretty that person is or how sexy that person is, if they tell you that, ew, weird, that's gross, or ew, weird, you're a pervert, that you know they're wrong and that you actually believe truly in your inner sense of rightness. I think that if everybody could do a little bit more work to kind of shore up their reserves around their sense of self-worth and self-value, and that often applies with self-care as well, people probably wouldn't be putting up with as much bullshit in the bedroom as they do. So that is all to say that if you're afraid of being rejected by a lover for sharing your desires, that's a valid feeling. If they reject you for sharing your desires, they're the asshole.
Oh.
I mean, that's pretty much it for me.
Like werewolf advice on Halloween. Bye, Allie Moon. Bye. There you go, everyone. Allie, howl at the moon with the advice. I'm gonna let that sit. Allie, can I ask you a question? Can you give me my phone charger so this doesn't die out? It's probably up on my desk. Oh, great. Yes. So I'm gonna leave it because there's some other questions about being rejected, and I can add my answer onto Allison's. Thank you, darling. All right. So next question. This one is from Zach from Texas. Ooh, Zach, zombie Zach from Texas. This is more of a relationship question, so maybe it's not appropriate. Totally appropriate, Zach. Totally up to you, of course, whether you answer or not. How do you ask out somebody who's been providing you an intimate service, somebody like a sex worker or massage therapist or a sexual counselor or pro cuddler, without messing up the client-provider relationship? This is a really good one. So I'm going to read that again. How do you ask out somebody who's providing you an intimate service without messing up the client-provider relationship? This is Zach from Texas. And some examples Zach gives: sex worker, massage therapist, sexual counselor, pro cuddler. If you have other ones to add to this list, like somebody who's providing you an intimate service, what other things can we come up? Let's generate those on the comments. You've got sex worker, massage therapist already, sexual counselor, pro cuddler. What else you got out there? Come on, what you got for me? What you got for me, internet? So how do you ask somebody out without messing up the client-provider relationship? So as I plug in my phone cord here, I'll give you a little bit of my man cleavage. Hang on, there we go. This is a really great question because there's a bunch of different ways you could answer this, right? For you, as you know, Zach from Texas, I think whether it's inappropriate or not, the way I would do it is be like, I'm curious if you date your clients ever. And just you can ask, like, I'm curious about whether you've ever dated a client or if you date clients. If you ask like if you've ever dated a client, that's kind of a personal question, but you can start the conversation. I mean, you're just asking somebody out. I'm assuming it's for to see if you want to have an intimate relationship with them. And so, if it's a sex worker who's providing like a girlfriend or boyfriend experience, then, then they're already kind of providing something to that effect. They're just getting paid for it. So my advice to my sex worker friends is if you're providing that experience and somebody asks you out for a non-paid experience, I would say no, because what you're providing is part of your job. And so jokingly, like why would you give somebody who's already a paying client something for free? And everyone can have their own opinions about this, but it's hard enough to make a living out in the world, and sex work is already stigmatized. And I realize that, if you're a coach, if you're a therapist, if you're a client, there can be transference, there can be, romantic and intimate feelings for people because people are people. But establishing clear boundaries and sticking to them helps people come and get the things that they're paying you for. They're paying you for a service to get certain kinds of results or experiences. So from a sex worker perspective, or from a therapist perspective, or coach, massage therapist, when you start dating your clients, you're really mucking up those boundaries. Most of the people I know kind of, have done it, except for my therapist friends who are really, tight with their boundaries. And Allie, Howl at the Moon Wolf is back.
Bad Wolf is back.
Bad Wolf is back. That's a Doctor Who thing.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. So I would add to this answer. Yes, to the answer. Okay. I find this really, really complicated, particularly because oftentimes the person who has the money is the one who has the power in the relationship. Mm-hmm. So sometimes a person may feel like they need to answer in a happy way for them to make the money that they are expecting from you. So their livelihood is based on how much they make you feel good about things. So, especially with sex workers, I mean, any sort of staff that is basically at your whim, don't ask before you've paid them for that session.
Oh, that's good. I wouldn't have come up with that. That's good. I wouldn't have come up with that?
Well, maybe.
But you didn't hear me going in that one.
So clear boundaries. And also, I think one of the issues is, and this is a little bit harder to say, but like, don't be attached to outcomes. That's creepy. So when you're attached to outcomes, as in like, I would love to keep this client relationship with you, and I really want this to be an intimate relationship without me paying you in the future. And if you don't do that, I'm going to either have feelings, or I'm going to leave a bad Yelp review, or I'm not going to come back. Like, this is a really dangerous position to put for a lot of people to be put in.
And to understand that for you as the person who's asking, you're putting the other person into all this very complex situation.
Yeah.
And just because you're innocent or naive or kind-hearted about it doesn't mean it's not complex. Doesn't mean it has impact for the other person.
Yeah, and so, and I would like to make a slight distinction between sex work and other kinds of work here, because, and I'm not a sex worker, but I have a lot of friends and loved ones who are. I would actually draw a very hard line and say, don't ask sex workers for freebies, period. Every sex worker gets asked for freebies all the time. And even if you are genuinely like a cool person, if you met them through client work and they have not suggested initiating anything outside of client work, I would recommend just stay away from that conversation, because that the power dynamic is incredibly skewed in that perspective, and it's just not a good idea. Now, if you say like, I'm actually interested in ending, our work sessions, and I would like to stop seeing you professionally. However, I do actually really like you, and I would like to date you. And regardless, we're not going to see each other for work anymore. When you've established that boundary, I think it's okay to ask after that boundary has been very clearly put. But I think
but don't dangle, either date me or I keep paying you. Like it's the other thing that I would recommend, Zach, is go read some resources, some blog posts, some essays from sex workers, from massage therapists and things like that. Like get really nerdy nuanced on why this is problematic, so that you're really coming from, because it might change your mind. You might be like, holy shit, like that's such a bad idea for me to hit on my therapist, or for me to want to date my massage therapist. It's not that you're being creepy. Like my advice is to be honest about it, but then there's the naivete of you're putting this other person into this very complex situation. And none of us are perfect.
And if it's a cost, it might be helpful to do a little bit of cost benefit analysis here too. It's like, if that person gives you the best massages of your life, such that if by asking them out, you are putting in at risk the best massages of your life, then maybe it's not worth it to ask them on a date and just keep getting the best massages of your life.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are tough questions. They're good. They're great questions, but it's like, I want to role model and teach people, hey, be honest, be kind, do your homework. I don't want to give people advice that silences them, but like it's also about court awareness, right? Like Michael Jordan was a great basketball player because he knew where all of his players were on the court, even behind him, so he could pull off these crazy passes and stuff. If you don't have a lot of court awareness about all professions,
with power dynamics in
and
capitalism,
power dynamics, especially around
service
providers who deal with intimacy and touch and or sex, or psychological intimacy and connection, then you're just walking onto the basketball court and just whipping the basketball, and it's challenging. It's not like it's impossible. It doesn't necessarily make you a creep, because you're asking a thoughtful question, but just know that you could be making things really difficult for the other person, and they don't owe you anything. Just because they're a kick-ass massage therapist doesn't mean that they owe you a date. Not that I'm getting it from your question, but there are a lot of people out there that have a lot of entitlement and think they deserve things. And how you know that is when they ask something innocently and it gets complex, they get pissed off really fast, and aggro about things. And that's a lot of bullshit behavior that's already happening, especially to sex workers. You're the best. Allie Moon, ladies and gentlemen. Allison, howl at the moon. All right. So again, great questions, complex situations. Walk slowly. Do your research. Have conversations with people that you're not paying about their thoughts on these things, people who work in these industries. Okie dokie. And maybe I'll do that one for get some of my sex worker friends and massage therapist-y pro cuddler friends, and we'll ask this question of them and get their take. Next question. I'm not good at opening myself up to partners in an emotional way. This comes from Hawaii, by the way. Not that is indicative, but this is from somebody from Hawaii. I'm not good at opening up myself to my partners in an emotional way. Are there any resources that would help me display intimacy with my partner? Actually, this wasn't from Hawaii. This is going to be, I hope this isn't too shocking. And I don't want to I'm not making fun of this person, but they left a really funny, it's funny to me, and it could be offensive to somebody else. So I'm not good at opening up myself to my partners in an emotional way. Are there resources that would help me display intimacy with my partner? Signed, Anonymous Black with a big dick. Allison's laughing in the kitchen. So if I didn't know that, I don't know this person, but I would say, well, maybe maybe part of the intimacy problem is your snarky behavior and your witty repartee. But if we just answered this, or maybe you're just testing me to see if I would actually say that is who you are, anonymous person with a large schlong. One of the easiest ways that I use a lot for me is I just tell people what's going on with me when I'm with them. So like a good way to open yourself up to partners is to talk to them about this. Like, hey, something I'm struggling with is opening myself up to you, like in an emotional way. So like I literally will narrate what is actually going on in my head, like what I'm actually thinking. Because the thing I'm struggling with, again, some situations, as we found out with Zach, are really, could be potentially really complex and problematic or challenging. But, like sharing with people what you're struggling with is a way to open up emotionally with people. And so, again, like Brene Brown, other people and resources and techniques we've already talked about, my difficult conversation formula, which there's an article and then worksheets you can download. You can go to readaboutsexuality.com/convo, CONVO. The difficult conversation formula can be really useful to get you present with what you're afraid of is going on or might happen if you share something with somebody, and then also get present to what it is you'd like to have happen. And sharing the things you're afraid of and the things that you want to create, or your intentions, the good things, those things can be really powerful, simple ways to open up to people and give yourself a format. And you're free to sign up and download the worksheets for the difficult conversation formula, but use the writing exercise to get clear for yourself what it is that you're struggling with. And we kind of go back to say what it is that you're not saying. Always, for me, it's always like, follow the things that you're afraid of, follow the things that scare you. There lies gold usually, or maybe candy corn in this instance. So yeah, I would start there, and sometimes sharing exactly what's happening for you and what you're struggling with is inappropriate, not appropriate, like appropriate air quotes, but like in kind ways. Like, just don't throw everything that's going on in your world that you're struggling with onto the people around you and expect them to have to take it. But saying, hey, I'm trying to practice opening up and being more emotionally vulnerable. Like, do you have bandwidth for me to share some of the stuff that I'm struggling with? Because I watched this dude in a nurse's hat sitting next to a jack-o'-lantern give me advice that maybe I should just share what's actually going on for me. And if you have bandwidth, I'd love to practice that and actually share. So thank you, Anonymous Black with a big dick, for that question. Now this one comes from Hawaii. Why are men attracted mostly from? Oh, okay, so it's kind of a little complicated. Why are men attracted mostly to flirty and bitchy types of women? How can I shine amongst other women to get the best guy's attention for myself? You know what? I feel like Allison, Howl at the Moon might come in with this one, because you were giggling in the kitchen. But why are men? Huh? She wasn't laughing at the question. I don't know that you can hear her on this microphone. So the question is, why are men mostly attracted to the more flirty and bitchy type of women? How can I shine amongst other women to get the best guy's attention for myself? Okay. So this weekend in Orange County, I was talking about, and this is something I've talked about in lots of different places, but it bears repeating because I think it's really useful. And I'll give a couple of, pieces of like kung fu advice here. The idea of like most men, most women, this or that, when we talk in these big reductive statements, and sometimes I do too, I just think my advice is better. A lot of these big statements, reductive statements, come from like old advice. Now your lived experience might actually be, oh my goodness, all the men are putting all their attention on the flashy, flirty women or chasing the bitchy women. Here's my advice. I think those people, unless you are a human being who's really attracted to bitchy women or really attracted to flirty women, like truly attracted, like that's your jam. I think most people are playing the games that Cosmo magazine talks about a lot. And Cosmo also does some really great stuff, but it's an easy popular example of, there has been a lot of popular relationship advice out there on how to attract a man or how to attract a woman. That's actually really just bad advice. It kind of works because everybody else is following the same bad advice. But what it does is it leads to unhealthy relationship dynamics because we're all trying to be attractive in this old, outdated relationship advice formats. And that advice is outdated, and it wasn't really great advice to begin with, like for healthy relationships about happiness and joy and fulfillment. So I would say you're asking the wrong question, person from Hawaii. I would say, well, one thing I would say is come hang out, with me at some events and stuff like that, and nerd out on the old advice versus the new advice. And the piece that I'll drop in here, the piece of advice is, rather than trying to play the attraction game, like the currency of relationships is attraction. I have to do this to be attractive. I have to be bitchy, or play hard to get, or be mean, or be flirty, or be this or be that. I need to have this job, or, be this thin, or live in this neighborhood, or like, rather than trying to play the attraction game, which is the old advice, I would say start playing the self-expression game. So are you being the you that makes you the happiest, that makes you most fulfilled, that the you that nourishes you the most? And so rather than playing the attraction game, you want to swap out, you want to exchange your currency for self-expression. So, are you being the you that is just so excited and happy by the life you're already living that you catch people's attention? And just because you catch their attention, like you're just so thrilled with your life that you are thrilling whenever you talk about it. But rather than going and dating everyone for whom you're catching their attention, have you put some thought into the kinds of men you want to have a relationship with? And are you finding the watering holes that these men are at? Ladies and gentlemen, guest appearance by her wolfiness.
Yes. I also noticed that maybe there might be some confirmation bias happening here. And just kind of going off your conversation. If you're attracted to the gregarious, outgoing party guys, but you're not one of those people, then it might be very easy for you to feel completely overlooked in a large, loud, gregarious party situation. But it also might be a little bit of squeaky wheel situation. You might just be noticing the loud, gregarious women with the loud, gregarious guys because they're both loud and gregarious, and loudness tends to attract attention. You're not necessarily seeing the quiet, bookish men who aren't at the loud party because they're home with their bookish girlfriends.
They wouldn't be at the loud party.
Right. And so you might be just thinking that all these men are just choosing the specific kind of woman, ignoring the fact that there are a lot of kinds of men and women who aren't in those environments, who don't do that, who are Netflixing and chilling every night instead. So if you want that kind of guy.
Stranger Things.
Yeah. If you want that kind of guy, then I can see how that can be really problematic. I mean, I definitely had to learn how to be more like loud and brash because I like theater and I like dating actors and I dated a lot of actors. And so I had to learn how to attract that kind of attention.
And you
Soap
like
opera
loud
is
men.
included.
You like loud men who played evil male nurses.
Well, I mean, I like
you like
men
quiet guys too.
I like men who kind of who grab spotlights. And so I kind of had to learn how to grab a spotlight too, to grab their attention. And I did. And it wasn't organic for me. What I ended up doing was starting to be more organic to myself, and I attracted a man who could play it both ways, so to speak. But I do think that there might be a little bit of confirmation bias. I think if you're looking for men who aren't in that kind of world, then you might need to find the leks, find the watering holes that where the guys who are slightly more your type hang out, and odds are they'll be attracted to women who are slightly more like your type.
Yeah. And this is where we go into the whole, like, dating your species. One of my workshops, you can actually get it on my store. I'll put the link. I think if you go to readaboutsex.com/species, that'll come up. But this is where you figure out the kinds of people that you're into, because this isn't just advice for women dating men. Like, this is dating advice, and realize, like, slow things down and notice where you have confirmation biases, like Allison said, and ask yourself, like, are you asking yourself the right question? And have you figured out the kind of person that you want to have relationships with? Sometimes you don't know the answers because you haven't dated enough people, or you've dated a bunch of the wrong people, which is great. You know who it's not, but that doesn't mean you know who it is. I knew, I had a strong hunch that Allison was somebody I wanted to date when and how we met, which was at the LGBT Center in Los Angeles. And, and I like to date queer women. And like fierce feminists, like that's my jam. And so, when we met and I knew I was attracted, I, very cautiously approached, and we had a great conversation about feminism and stuff like that. But eventually when we started kind of seeing each other, like I was still, this is the beginning of me making sure that we fit on in a lot of different ways. Because we were definitely good for dating, but that didn't mean we were good for buying a house together or things like that. So again, like as you start to figure these things out, there's, realize that sometimes the answer you have at the watering hole is you're looking for your species who's thirsty. That doesn't mean you don't know what it's like yet to find, the person at the watering hole who's ready to buy a house. Like, so there's a lot of other questions, but that's where I would start my journey.
Can I add one more little? This is really basic advice, but I think it's often overlooked. So you mentioned that again, like these characteristics of these women were that they were loud and bitchy, but is there something else that they did or were, right? Like, so if you like dancing, for instance, and you like these men who are like owning the dance floor, are they dating women who are really good dancers, right? And there is a level of like being part of being attractive is getting good at interesting things that excite you, and hopefully those interesting things that excite you also excite people that you're interested in.
Yeah, and this is where we're back. Stay away from the attraction thing. Like, beware of it, because you're like, oh well, I need to get good at dancing, but you don't like dancing,
right? Get good at something that you really want to do, and you'll find people who are into that thing as well.
Like meetups, we have the internet now. There's Facebook groups for everything. If you're kinky, there's FetLife, which is kind of the kinky version of Facebook. And believe me, there are groups for everything. Things you don't even want to know exist. And then, as you get good at the things that really thrill you and nourish you, go hang out with those people. Maybe they're not the ones you want to date, but maybe they have a friend.
Right.
Like, use your passions and your hobbies as ways to expand your social network as you hone, and get clear about the things that you're really looking for in a relationship.
Yeah. Let your World of Warcraft guild know that you're on the prowl.
Oh.
Or
That's
whatever.
Good. Prowl. Says the werewolf.
All right, dinner's almost ready.
All right, dinner's almost ready? Can I keep going now?
Of course, you can do whatever you want.
Okay, but you're going to eat dinner. All right. You're more important than me eating dinner right now. So we're looking at comments. I think they refresh. On the phone. Oh, there's a lot. Katrina, this reeks of why do nice guys finish last vibe. I think self-confidence and being yourself is most important. It isn't about pretending to be something somebody else wants. Yep, absolutely. And the idea, right, like self-confidence can come from you getting really good at something that you really love. or just knowing that, hey, you know what, I'm shitty at this thing, but I love it. And the confidence of getting to know yourself. And again, like this is just the beginning of the rest of your lives, right? The rest of our journeys in like geeking out. The other thing I would say is, and again, I'm super biased, right? Because I'm a geek, but hanging out with people that you can have these kind of meta conversations with, like you can ask people like, hey, what do you think about, the idea of thinking about vulnerability and sharing the things you're scared of with people as a means of creating vulnerable connection. Like, and I think it's just more exciting for me to hang out with people who will take those conversations seriously and be like, well, I don't know, I've never thought about that, but here's what I think right now. And you can have these cool, maybe nerdy conversations about ideas. People who are like, why are you always talking about stuff like this? That's okay if you're trying to watch Game of Thrones or something like that, and you need to focus on something else. But like dating people and starting relationships with people who just have lost their curiosity for life, I don't know. Like, I think that could be also part of the challenge. Like steer away from people like that. Like, God bless everyone, but maybe those aren't the people that are gonna like squeeze the juice out of life. Now I'm thinking about Led Zeppelin and lemon juice running down your leg. Another laugh from Allison in the kitchen. There we go. Good. We got Allison to laugh. That's good. That's good. Hit some emoticons if you can, just so I know that this is working. At some point, Facebook will probably kick us off because I think we used to have an hour and a half limit. So we'll see. Next question. How do I figure out what my needs are? This is, look at all the emoticons coming on my phone. Okay, good. We're still good. How do I figure out what my needs are? This is from Anonymous. Okay. So the easiest way to answer this question is to invite you to come join me for 3 days in Southern California, in Irvine, California. I always want to say Irvington, it's not Irvington. But in Orange County, December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, I'm doing a seminar. So come there because we're actually going to work on needs and boundaries and agreements and wants and desires. I have exercises, and they're writing exercises and talk, and write more, take a break, go outside in the sunshine, think, maybe journal a little bit. There's some tools and some tips and some tricks and some ways to start to tease out what your needs are. You could also geek out on like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which now apparently also has a couple more added to them. One of them is Wi-Fi. And I think that's one of the most important. Wouldn't you agree? Wi-Fi. But starting to figure out your needs, there's lots of workshops. There's some great books out there. I'll try to put some in the links and in the comments for you. But the things I would say a place to start for your needs is asking yourself, what do you think you don't deserve? Followed by the question, what do you think no one could love you for? These are scary questions, and they're ones that I use all the time because they help me figure out my wants and my desires, because I have a lot of shame. I have a lot of sexual shame, especially. And you'll be like, Reid, how is that possible? You are the queer polyamorous slut. It's true. I have a lot of shame. I just have really great tools for navigating my shame and not letting it stop me. And I have recalibrated myself so that when I'm feeling a lot of shame, I know I'm in the right place. Now, that might not be your journey. That might not be the way you want to set your compass to navigate the world. But asking yourself what you think no one could love you for, something that you want, something that you secretly desire. I would do that writing exercise to start digging around at some of the things that you're not letting yourself maybe even think about because you're so worried about what other people think or that you're a bad person. And again, like, this doesn't have to be sexual. This could be like, I want to leave the town I grew up in and move to the city, or I want to leave the city and move to the country, or I want to leave the United States. Like, sometimes we don't think about things because we've already crossed that out for reasons of shame and guilt and fear. And so we never even examine them a little deeper. Again, these are things you can talk about to a coach or to people in therapy, to in group workshops and things like that. This doesn't have to be stuff that you need to do alone, but not everybody can hire a therapist or afford joining a workshop or something like that. So again, like, start with the writing exercises. If you are interested about what's going on December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, that course, that seminar, that workshop for 3 days is called High Performance Relationship Mastery. And you can check that out by going to readaboutsex.com/HPRM, High Performance Relationship Mastery, HPRM, readaboutsex.com/HPRM. And that'll walk you through what that whole event is about. And there's tons of bonuses. It's coming up real fast, but you can check it out and see if it's for you. And then we will tackle and dig into needs, and we'll also learn about boundaries and agreements, and navigate a whole bunch of nerdy, geeky stuff so that you can have your relationships like performing better. And if you have a great relationship, it'll take it up to the next notch, because we're not going to be dealing with old advice. And I'm really nerdy and passionate about that stuff. Another question. How do I get over the scary feeling I have when getting close to or having sex with somebody who has herpes? This comes from BS from Oregon. So how do I get over the scary feeling I have when getting close to or having sex with somebody with herpes? I know the precautions and how it's transferred, but even when there's no outbreak, I worry to the point where it affects me somatically. My head says it's okay, but my body won't go there, and I feel ashamed about this. So BS from Oregon, great question. I've done a lot of videos on my YouTube channel about herpes. I've done a ton of them with Kathy Vartuli from the Intimacy Dojo. So if you want to go to youtube.com/readaboutsex, go to my channel and then type in herpes. There's a bunch there that talks about herpes, but it sounds like you've done a lot of research about herpes. So we've got some videos there that talk about the emotional side of it. And like, the quick answer here is, like, I get it. You're not broken. Like, maybe the quick answer, the easy answer, is to just not date or have sex with people who have herpes. Or, use a lot of barriers, gloves, dental dams, condoms, things like that. Which, again, maybe that's a bummer for you, but like, asking yourself, what can you do to make yourself feel physically safe, to feel emotionally safe, and then also to feel like heart safe, like, your spirit. And cue Allie Moon. Allie, howl at the moon. I like that you keep popping in.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, because I think that it sounds like you understand herpes and its risks and kind of lack thereof, but you're having like what I would consider, maybe you consider it too, kind of an irrational fear response, which to me indicates there's something much deeper going on. It might be some hypochondria stuff. It might be some mortality stuff. It might be some cleanliness stuff, fear of being perceived by others as dirty or bad. I think there's probably some really deep old stuff going on under here, if you're aware that like herpes is actually not that big of a deal, and if you're aware that fatal. Most of the population has it and never has outbreaks. So if you understand all that stuff intellectually and you still have this really intense, like, ugh, there's probably something else much deeper going on that's like working at like a really kind of subconscious level. Use a personal example, Reid and I have an open relationship.
What?
And, he practices safe sex in the way that it makes him safe and makes me feel safe. And so, but there's still an experience that happens sometimes when he comes back from being on the road for a really long time, where I kind of have this, like, I know that you've been safe, I trust you, and I have this really weird kind of like physically dirty feeling, right? It feels like you're going to put something inside me that's been in so many other orifices and I can't catalog them all, right? And it's not rational. It's like if there was something going on with an STD status, he would let me know. Yeah. It's based on more of an emotional closeness thing. It's based on I don't feel like I'm in control of my body in those moments because I'm putting my trust into somebody else's hands. Around my own bodily sovereignty, which is some really intense stuff. And ultimately what I usually just have to do is kind of work through the feeling, feel my feelings, acknowledge them, at the same time say like, okay, Allison, like let's walk it through. What's the worst case scenario here, right? And once I go through all the worst case scenarios and still come out on the side of like, I trust Reid and I trust my relationship with him, like there's nothing that's really going to go horribly wrong. But it takes me some time to like get my lizard brain to shut the hell up for a little while so that my rational brain can be like, all right, like let's go through the list. So you might want to do a little bit of deep work to try and figure out what exactly is freaking you out about it. If it is being a pariah, if it is being dirty, if it is being slutty, or any of these things that are really negative connotations around sexuality in our world. And herpes tends to be this really bizarre one that people attach a lot of anxieties to, even though, again, not that big of a deal.
There's so much cultural stigma.
Yeah, it's madness to me, really. I don't quite understand why there's so much cultural stigma. It's a skin problem, right? It's not something that's going to cause irrevocable harm, particularly if you're not pregnant or going to give birth soon.
Yeah, and if you're one of the people out there who's watching who gets like really horrible outbreaks that are super painful, like my heart goes out to you. Like that, you drew the short straw on the herpes train.
Yeah, I don't mean to dismiss the actual very real lived experience of having
herpes
outbreaks, but I think the stigma attached to it is much greater in some ways, that says like you're dirty or bad, and that's just bullshit. So I think more of it's like, I'm curious as to what the underlying concerns are. Is it a fear of being any of those things, or is it a fear of just being ill? Is it a fear of losing some aspect of what you think is attraction or attractive body? All these things are really complex. So I think it would be worthwhile to dig into that, explore some of those deep feelings about it, and you might come up with some really interesting answers.
Yeah. Other things, just, we've already talked about it with some of the other answers to things like, is there something from your past around, illness or, being dirty or being slutty, or like whatever kind of like sex negativity, or I guess illness negativity or something like that. Is there something from your past that's there for you to have such a strong somatic reaction? You can have whatever level of reaction you have to for whatever reasons, but sometimes, not all the time, when things seem really intense, those might be clues that you're like, oh, you have a lot of jealousy in these situations. Has anything ever happened to you when you were growing up that, that's kicking this up? Like, is the somatic fear and anxiety that you're feeling now, like the actual feelings, like can you kind of carbon date them? Are they from right now, or is it from someplace else or from another time? And that can sometimes be helpful, because I've asked people that when I'm coaching them, and they're like, well, no. I'm jealous at Brad, but yeah, it does kind of seem an inordinate amount. And then there's like, and because they're thinking about their entire lives, not just this situation. Sometimes you can trace things back, and there might be a clue. And then when you have those aha moments, if they're there, then you can seek out resources to work on them, and maybe you can shift them, and maybe you can't.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to eat dinner.
Go eat your soup. I'm going questions. Let's see. Let's check out, see what we got over here. Somebody from Maui. Aloha. More questions. We got waves coming on. Full-size candy bars. What was that for? I don't know what that's for. We've got Brene Brown. Thank you, Katrina, for dropping in some links on shame. And back to some more questions. And then we'll wrap it up in a little bit. Because we've got more questions, but at some point I can't tell if Allison's mad at me that I'm doing this and not eating dinner. I'm not sure. We'll find out. I think she can hear me. Okay, so here's one. This one, it starts with "Getting fit ruins sex life," like it's a headline, a tabloid headline. My friend's husband. This comes from Anonymous. My friend's husband lost weight. The fat her clit used to rub against isn't there anymore, and she's having a harder time climaxing. What can she do? How can I ever have sex with my husband again after I experienced a very profound... Wait, that's the next question. Okay. Okay, so get fit, ruin sex life. My friend's husband lost weight. The fat her clit used to rub against isn't there anymore, and she's having a harder time climaxing. What can she do? So I cannot speak specifically to the clit, but I can speak to the fat around one's belly used as a sexual device, as a sexual enhancement tool. I called it my pleasure bumper. When I had a bigger belly, it was really awesome. I had never really thought of it. Like, you can use your belly as a sexual device, as a pleasure bumper, as something for somebody to rub against and grind against. Or I particularly enjoyed having somebody straddle me while I'm on my back, and I would grab them by the hips. And as we're having penetrative sex with my penis, I would like slam them. I would use my lats and my arms and pull them really hard as we're fucking into my belly, and kind of like have them like and that worked really well for it seemed like everyone involved in this situation. And I also I lost my pleasure bumper, and that was it was sad in a way. But other things, like if there's nothing there for you to rub your clit against, for your friend's clit against, Anonymous, we've got tools. We've got a whole world full of tools. Professional tools create professional results. We've got vibrators. You've got dildos and things that you can use to hump up against while you're also having sex with your partner. There's all kinds of things. There's sex furniture out there that might be able to get you into a better position to where you can get more grindy situations going on with your clit. My go-to is vibrators. I like vibrators. I like toys. They're just awesome. I like knowing that when I'm playing with people who have clits, that they feel comfortable using toys to augment whatever it is that we're doing. They're super useful for times when I can't get an erection, and then we just go right to the toys. Dildos are great to have around. Dildos and vibrators, things like that. So there's lots of different approaches. Different positions, of course, can also help, because now that this person doesn't have the belly that they used to, is there another position or a type of furniture or a pillow or something you can add to the sex and the position that will allow you to have something to rub your clit against? I keep trying to envision a situation where, Allison, what's the strap-on harness that allows for a biocock and a dildo, so you can do like double penetration? Do you remember the name of that?
That's like a threesome for two.
Yeah. Nerds who are watching right now, fetch me that strap-on. So there's a couple of things you could do, but You could, if your partner's into it, because again, this gentleman or this person who has the penis might not be into using toys and stuff, but if they want to consider it, you might be able to use a strap-on harness and the penis. So you've got a dildo and a penis. So as you're riding the biocock, you've got the other dildo placed strapped on above the cock, so it's there for rubbing. I want to think of other ideas. I want to brainstorm other ideas. You're all genius, smart folks. What are some ideas you can come up with to help our person anonymous with things that you could rub up against while having penetrative sex? And Allison Moon has changed back from being a werewolf. You lost your ears.
I did. I had to change back so I could eat human food.
Oh yeah, and don't forget hands.
Yeah.
Hands.
There are some cock rings too that have little attachments on them.
Oh, good one.
That would be like a little bit of a little nub.
Yep.
And also there's a position that became very popular in the late 90s. I think probably because of 6 Feet Under. It's a long story, called grinding the corn. But it's essentially a move where he puts his penis inside.
Candy corn?
No, like it's like, I think it's like a
Corn the band?
Stop. It's a mortar and pestle situation. Okay, so basically you put the penis inside the vagina, and then the man, and this is in missionary position, kind of moves higher up on her body so that he enters kind of at an angle. And instead of going in and out like this, you're kind of going in and out like this.
Yeah.
Not always comfortable for everybody.
It's called grind the corn?
Yeah, I didn't invent the term. I think probably Cosmo did. Anyway, but the point is to use the base of the penis to stimulate the clitoris in lieu of a belly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cock ring. The cock ring is a good one.
Yeah, the cock ring with the little...
Yeah, I'm trying to think who makes that. Fun Factory, I think, makes a cock ring that has a little thing. The Lovely. Duh. There's an app and a sex toy called The Lovely that I have done consulting for, so full disclosure. And it's a cock ring that also has a vibrator in it, but the way that it's shaped, because it also has a lot of tech in it, because it's measuring things like in and out repetitions, like steps. It's measuring thrust, it's measuring speed, it's measuring a whole bunch of things. It's small, but it would provide a kind of nub for you to be able to rub up against while you're capturing all this awesome data that gets displayed on your phone and graphs and things like that. And also the app will recommend different positions and tips and things like that. And yours truly wrote some of that advice for The Lovely. So maybe you're gonna check out The Lovely. Thank you, Allison. Cock rings. That's what I was looking for. Comments. Thank you for posting. All right, we've got people on it looking for other things. Candy corn, full-size candy bars. Oh, here it is. Regarding full-size candy bars, I had said something was the candy corn of whatever. Who knows what I said? I can't remember. And maybe it was the full-size candy bar instead. That's good. That's good. Now you're like my writing team. Oh, here it is. Found the harness. It's called the DP harness. So there you go. And I think there's a couple other harnesses out there like that. Thank you so much, Katrina. All right, another question. So the getting fit, we got that one done. Oh, here it goes. How can I ever have this one's a deep one. This is a deep one. Get ready, folks. Take a deep breath. Go. So this one is, how can I ever have sex with my husband again after I experienced a very profound sexual and emotional connection with another partner? That person is not in my life anymore, but it is hard to ignore the sharp contrast between sexual experience with my husband and the other person. I love my family. I want to make it work. I just cannot make myself have sex with my husband. Any advice? Anonymous. So thank you for this great question. So if I was doing a coaching session with Anonymous, my first questions would be like, so how fresh is this relationship? And I would start there for a couple of reasons. One, long-term relationships versus new relationship energy for people who don't have a lot of experience with both, right? Like a lot of us have had long-term relationships, and a lot of us have fallen in love before, but not everybody on the planet is currently in a long-term relationship and also been in love at the same time. Now, there are a lot of people who've had affairs because the culturally approved version of non-monogamy is still cheating. And by culturally approved, I have air quotes around that. But the idea now in the polyamory worlds, swinging, kink, other kinds of non-monogamous plus integrity kinds of things, consensual non-monogamy world, there's a lot of conversation about new relationship energy and how that can wreak havoc on existing relationships, and how do you kind of work around it, or work through it, or just be with it? Like, how do you handle when you're in a relationship and a new one starts and the flood of endorphins and, brain cocaine basically that happens when we're in love? So the reason I would ask how fresh is this past relationship is because if it was transitioned recently, then there's a decent hunch that what's still going on is a lot of those residual chemicals and experiences from the new relationship energy. Esther Perel has a book called Mating in Captivity, which is a brilliant book. Esther Perel also came out with a new book recently called The State of Affairs. But I would recommend reading Mating in Captivity to start to understand how long-term relationships don't feel like new relationship energy, and just start kind of informing yourself around the what is. Like, falling in love when it's fresh feels very different, is a stark contrast to having a life partner that you've been raising kids with and building a family. And I think it's not like you forget, but it's like most of us don't know what that's like until we experience it. So for Anonymous, like, congratulations, you're experiencing it. And yes, it's a stark contrast, but that's exactly what it is. And, with this new partner who's now sounds like is out of your life, if you were with them for however many years raising kids, then fell in love with somebody new, then it might be the same situation. So, without kind of being cliche and being like, this too shall pass, can you be grateful for the experiences that you've had? You say that, you love your family and you want to make it work. And then can you start on I want to say like the slow road to recovery, but there's nothing really broken. You're at where you're at, and what would it take, or could you consider what physical intimacy, non-sexual or otherwise, or sexual, what that might look like with your husband? Like, it doesn't have to be big leaps and bounds. You're not trying to take a relationship that you've had for however many years and inject it with new relationship energy. I don't really think that really happens. But could you imagine connecting with them sensually and intimately, or even non-sexually, in a kind of sensual, close, vulnerable way? And what would that look like? And enjoy the relationship that you have and understand that the connection that you're going to have with your husband isn't going to be like the connection that you had with the person you newly fell in love with. They're just different. And that it also might be part of it too. Again, I'm not a therapist, nor do I play one on television. But today on Facebook Live, I am a nurse. Could it also be that part of the thing that's coming up when you write that you just can't make yourself have sex with your husband, and you shouldn't be making yourself do anything? But could it also be that part of that might also be due to the fact that you're grieving? You're grieving the transition of this awesome, fiery, brilliant, burning relationship that you just ended. I don't know, but I would give it time. I would, when and where it's appropriate, talk to somebody, and start getting your thoughts down, maybe in a journal or something like that. And this is a really great question. And if you need further support or anything, you're welcome to email me, and you can reach out at reid@reidaboutsexuality.com. And that also goes for all of you. I mean, I read all my emails. I try to answer them. For some of these questions, because you come up with some amazing questions, I put them in my little inbox folder for videos, and I try to shoot videos on them. And, you're all welcome to ping me and ask for advice if I have products or courses or things like that might be suitable for your situation. And again, you might want to come to High Performance Relationship Mastery, and that's reidaboutsexuality.com/HPRM. All right, another couple of questions. This one from Paul. Finally, somebody's asking a question about butts. Paul asks, how do I get my wife to play with my ass? Allison, you want to jump in on this one?
I think it's a man-to-man question.
That's a man-to-man question, Allison says. She's smart. Paul, if you're watching right now, or if you're watching this later, come closer, Paul. Like, pull the computer close. Have you tried asking her? I mean, there's a place to start. No, I'm gonna okay, that gets Allison to come over. That gets out. I'm being silly.
I know.
Wow, we just baited her. It was great.
That was pretty good bait.
Man to man.
No, that was fine advice. Speaking as a lady who enjoys playing with her man's butt.
Have her talk to Allison.
Again, and I don't know you. I don't know your butt. It's probably lovely. For somebody who's squeamish about butts in general.
You?
No,
or are you speaking for people?
I'm saying for somebody who's squeamish about butts in general, be hyper hygienic will help. And you might start being hyper hygienic before you even ask, so that she starts to notice how squeaky clean your butt is. Because some people just are squeamish about butts because of dirt, disease, whatever, and it's whatever. Everybody's comfort is different. So you might want to practice with a little enema that you have at home. You might want to practice just really getting up in there and getting clean. If you're feeling real fancy, maybe go get a Brazilian wax. Anything that makes it a little bit more palatable for somebody who might not be into it. And again, I don't know if your wife's into butt stuff or not, but if you're not quite sure if she is, or if she's kind of squeamish about it, making your butt as pretty sweet smelling package as you possibly can will go a really long way to her wanting to put her finger and or face in there.
Love you.
I mean, what?
I just love you.
Yeah.
Fancy. Yeah. What a fancy ass.
Yeah.
Okay. Just put a little time and attention into it.
Yeah.
Spruce it up, Paul.
Exactly. Pretend it's your first night working at the strip club, and you got to make sure that you get a lot of dollar bills.
Treat your ass like it's your honeymoon, Paul. Wow, this is I don't know what just happened. I was being snarky, but serious. Have you asked her? Let's assume Paul hasn't. Check out the difficult conversation formula. Another thing that you could do, I have an online course called Sex 10X that has a whole bunch of videos about ass play. And again, like this can be tricky, not in a bad way, but like some people like, hey, honey, let's do this online course together. And the reason you bought the online course is because there's a part of the course that's about the thing that you're trying to, break the ice with on your, with your partner. So there's like there's a little bit of a hidden agenda. But then, some people, your wives and husbands and boyfriends and girlfriends and friends with benefits better than I do, everyone out there. So maybe the call is, you invite them to go do this thing or go to this workshop that has built into it a piece that's really vulnerable for you, and you're trying to break the ice. Because your judgment is that if you ask them directly, they might be a no, and kind of put the kibosh on the whole thing. Great distinction Marsha Buczynski made in a podcast I was listening to Marsha, and just go follow Marsha Buczynski. She's amazing. One of the co-founders of Cuddle Party, and the Good Girl Recovery Project is one of Marsha's babies. The thing Marsha said was there's a distinction between, and a lot of people don't make this distinction, do you want to do this, and are you willing to do this? So when you ask, I'll pretend I'm Paul, I'm like, hey, honey, do you want to play with my ass? And my wife says, no. You don't know if she's willing to play with your ass. So she answered the question that you asked, and finding out, are you willing to play with my ass? Because around sex, a lot of the things that we think people are asking is, am I into this, or is this something that excites me? Well, maybe I'm not into it. Maybe it doesn't excite me, but I'll still try it. And especially if I love you and this is something you want to explore, okay. So could be also a good idea to ask, make that distinction between the willing and the wanting. And it's okay, as long as you're okay with it, it's okay to do something that you don't want to do if you're okay with doing it. Like there's the hard no, I don't want to do this, and then there's the meh, I don't care to do it. I don't want to, but I'm not a no. And we don't ask that because again, there's a lot of gray area in sex itself, but a lot of times, we don't have these fine distinctions. And she's back.
Hello, I'm chewing. There's also another thing, and this is something that I've noticed that men tend to downplay a lot of the times in heterosexual relationships, is how much pleasure something will give them. A man might present this to his wife and be like, hey, I read this thing, or maybe this would be fun, as opposed to I think that this would give me a lot of pleasure, or I'm super curious about what kind of pleasure it would give me. Would you be interested in helping me find out how good this could feel to me? Because a lot of times when you're in a loving, wonderful relationship, it's really fun to give pleasure to another person, even if it's not something you're into. Again, you may have, if you follow Reid, you might know I was pretty gay until I met this one. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'm not as gay as I thought I was.
It was my freshly waxed, very, very fancy ass.
True. But you also have freshly waxed balls. And
that was
I still don't particularly love giving blowjobs, but I love making my man feel good. And so I will give blowjobs here and there on special occasions when
Birthdays.
Inspired.
Halloween.
Maybe, and if you keep that costume on.
Trick or treat.
But when you really actually this is something I want to do for you because it would feel really good. So I think presenting it as a honey, this would be something that I would really love to receive from you. Would you be down? And it doesn't have to be in a coercive way, but really this would give me pleasure. Let's play with ideas of giving each other a lot of pleasure. So I think that lead with the pleasure. I think that's probably a really good place to start.
You're great.
Thanks.
All right. I'm going to do one more question because we're almost at 2 hours now. And I'm just surprised Facebook hasn't kicked us off, but I'm also afraid that if we go over some limit, then they won't post the video. So I'd rather cut it short and have more questions for later than lose the whole video for everybody who wants to watch it tomorrow and whatnot. So I prefer, this comes from Jim from Illinois. I prefer to have fewer, deeper erotic encounters than my partner, who's ready almost daily. How can I postpone him without hurting his feelings? He frequently accuses me of not being interested in sex, which could not be further from the truth. Oh, wait, this isn't from Jim. This is from Naiya on Maui. I'm so sorry. Naiya on Maui. I prefer to have fewer, deeper erotic encounters with my partner who's ready almost daily. How can I postpone him without hurting his feelings? He frequently accuses me of not being interested in sex, which could not be further from the truth. Okay. There's so many different ways to answer this question and so many different perspectives to look at. So I would go into having a conversation around like ideal situations, needs, and like there's the ideal, and then there's like what would be like a worse, like a bad situation. And for both of you, and maybe you bring in a therapist to kind of sit, or a coach to kind of be the third person to kind of mediate, but maybe you don't need that. But you're having a conversation of, this situation. Now, if already in the question is he often accuses me of not being that interested in sex. So I'm kind of assuming that the person's already a little bit frustrated. But when you look at, and I won't even say this is like a libido issue, this is more of a frequency issue. And, as for me, as somebody who has a lot of sex, there's also a situation where you can have like, it's not too much sex, but like when you have a lot of sex, like you're kind of not horny for it in the same way. You're not craving it in the same way because you're well fed, so to speak. The idea of talking with your partner about ideally, like how much sex, on the high end of the scale would they like? 3 times a day, 5 times a day, 3 times a week, whatever that is. And then on the lower end, like what would be kind of like a good kind of like baseline, you feel like you're getting your needs met. And for some people that's an emotional choice. So it's like, no, I want to have sex 3 times a day. And you're like, well, what's your kind of baseline average? And they're like 3 times a day, which is usually more of an emotional kind of answer than, if we were having sex 3 times a week, but I also felt connected to you and was getting some of my other monkey needs met, right? Because a lot of people get a lot of their social connection needs met also through sex with their partners, and they don't think that there's more crayons in the crayon box. So, if we had sex 3 times a week and also went for a couple of walks, or, played a board game, or did something fun that also kind of nourished me, then overall what I'm looking for is connection and feeling loved and accepted by you. And then maybe it doesn't have to always be sex. And the other question being, does he understand that for you, it's not that you don't love him, it's not that you don't like sex, it's just that you would like to have a little bit more time, kind of like a geyser, like you need a little bit more time to build up the pressure so that the sex is really like good, and that you'd rather have the than force yourself to do something you don't want to be doing, or have sex when you're not really pent up in that juicy way. The third thing I would start investigating and chatting about is, well, how can I help you have your sexual connection with me, your erotic connection with me, in a way where I don't have to have the sex? Allison is a great example of a relationship where there are times when we want to have some sort of sexual connection, but Allison wants to have an orgasm and be connected to me, but I'm not in the mood to fuck or to go down on her or to hand fuck her. And Allison was genius, and she's like, well, will you just hold me while I buzz off with my vibrator? And I'm like, sure. And so I would like cuddle her and kind of nuzzle her and make out with her while she would get off with the vibrator. And then that kind of met our needs. She got to be connected with me. I got to like be with her while she got off. And then I could go back to work or whatever it was I was doing. And it didn't have to be like a whole production. So also just trying to get a little bit more explicit about what are the needs that you all need to get met, because maybe you could, jack him off with a fleshlight, which is something, that I think is a great addition to all relationships, and can also be a lot of fun when and if you're not in the mood to give somebody a hand job, because using a fleshlight to jack off somebody it can be novel and fun, and is also really useful for some folks who have certain kinds of hand issues, and like arthritis and things like that. There's lots of uses for a fleshlight. You can go to fleshlight.com, look at their FAQ. There's some great ideas there for just how to use a fleshlight. But can you think a little bit outside the box, get clear about what kind of needs are trying to be met, and then put more crayons in that crayon box of ways to get those needs met. And I would look at those 3 different areas and have some conversations about them, and good luck with that. And again, this is anonymous. Oh, this is somebody in Maui. If you want to fly to Orange County and come to High Performance Relationship Mastery December 1st through 3rd, then that might be really fun for both of you, because we'll nerd out on a lot of relationship and communication stuff and emotional IQ things, and we'll also be geeking out here and there on some sexuality stuff and some sexual self-confidence and skill things as well, because getting to be savvy and coordinated with how you negotiate and can figure out what your needs are, and your partner, and support your partners in getting their needs met around sex also is another piece of having a relationship that performs at a higher level. So there. And that pretty much takes us to about 2 hours. So I hope this FAQ was really fun, not too scary. I've still got a bunch of other questions. So I'm gonna eat some food because I was flying all day. I was traveling today, and I'm actually very hungry. And I'm gonna bring this FAQ to a close, and I will use these amazing questions to answer for more of the Facebook Lives that I'm going to be doing. And I just want to thank everybody, including Allie Moon, who's doing this motion from across the dining room table. Plug my event one more time, Allison says. So please, if you're curious, share with a friend. Go to readaboutsexx.com/HPRM, which stands for High Performance Relationship Mastery, which is my 3-day seminar that's happening in Orange County, Irvine, California, Southern California in December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So sunny Irvine, California in the beginning of December. And if you want to beef up on some kick-ass communication and relationship and sexual skill sets, we're going to just kind of tear apart the old advice, and we're going to throw it out, and we're going to install some new advice and some new ways of looking at relationships so that you can identify why relationships, dating, long-term relationships, short-term relationships, why even casual sex can be so frustrating these days. I have ideas, and I have tools, and I have some things that a lot of people are finding a lot of value in and getting a lot of amazing transformation in their love life and relationship life. And these aren't just relationships for intimacy. These are relationship skill sets for that you can use for business, communication skills you can use with your kids, sexual self-confidence and ways to navigate shame so that you can be better at it for yourself, and you can answer questions better for your friends. You can be less afraid of sex so that if your kids have questions, you know where to point them and for better resources, and you can answer questions too. So if high performing relationships is something that's interesting to you, if you're frustrated with the way things are, then high performance relationship mastery might be able to help. If you have a good or great relationship and you want to get it to someplace even better, a lot of these tools will help. I know, because I've helped a lot of people with them, and you can take good and great and bop it up to excellent and amazing and out of this world. And I hope to see you there. So readaboutsex.com/HPRM. It's coming up real fast. There's some amazing bonuses, so go check them out. And thank you, Allison, for telling me to plug it one more time. As we wrap up, everyone, please have a great Halloween. This is the jack-o'-lantern I carved myself, my first jack-o'-lantern for the new home that Allison and I have here in Oregon. And hence I have the Oregonian beard. They wouldn't let me move here until I started growing it. And I don't know, kind of like it, but I'm kind of thinking of shaving it. I don't know, but Allison really likes it. So on your way out, vote yes or no for the beard. And no matter what you vote, you're awesome. Share this video with a friend, post it in a Facebook group of yours, and have a really awesome Halloween. Everyone have a safe Halloween, trick or treat and all that good stuff. And yeah, and shout out to Allie Howl at the Moon for her guest appearances, and go check out girlsex101.com. All right. Bye, everyone. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Say goodbye to the Jack. Bye, Jack. Oh, wow. I think I just blew out the candles somehow. Spooky. Bye, everyone.